Hello, 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 and welcome to the new normal. It's me, Deborah Francis White, and this is the Instagram Live daily show from the Guilty Feminist about life and feminism in lockdown. Today, our guest is the amazing Jude Kelly from the Women of the World Festival. So I'll wait till a few more people get on before I invite her on. And in the meantime, I'll tell you all about our t-shirts. So every day, lovely Hannah from the merch store chooses a phrase or a catchphrase, something funny that the guest has said, and prints a t-shirt design. Those t-shirts are then only made on demand, so there's no waste, and getting more ecologically friendly, local and sustainable every single day. And then we can send them out to you, and all of the full profit either goes to the guest who said it, who's usually a gigging comedian who's got no gigs at the moment, or if it's a comedian or performer or activist or somebody who has some other kind of income, they donate it to another performer who is usually entirely dependent on gigs to pay their rent. So we've had quite a few fun slogans so far. One of my favourites is Alison Spittle's I won't catch corona for a flake. Bleak Sterical, Susie Bacoma's one, that's done very, very well, as has Ellen Jones's, I think was it Ellen Jones who said, everything's fine. Oh no, it's Emma Vogelman, everything's fine with Maggie Smith, or everything's possible with Maggie Smith, something like that. Ellen Jones's is Big Gay Mess, that's also sold very well. So check those out, guiltyfeminist.com, go to merch, then go to stay at home shirts. Okay, there's a few people on, so let's get Jude Kelly from the WOW Festival on. Let's see. I don't think we can add Jude here. Waiting for Jude. So maybe we have added her. Let's hope. It's usually more efficient than this. It's usually more efficient and usually more charming. I haven't had much sleep. So I feel like my banter, my busking banter. Hello, Jude.
Hello.
I was just explaining that my busking banter isn't very good because I didn't have much sleep last night because I was up writing a script. Normally, it's absolutely on point. Bless you, Tom, but please don't sneeze. I'm on television.
You don't really need a better excuse, do you, than I'm up all that script?
I mean, I was up. I went to sleep at 1:30, set my alarm for, or 2:30, set my alarm for 4:30, and then wrote till 7, then went back to sleep till 9, and got up at 9 for my Zoom dance class, my Zoom one-on-one dance class, Jude. This is how I live now. This is my new normal.
Well, I'm really, really glad. As you can see, but well, you probably can't all see, but I'm actually trying to point it out the window because you can maybe see the sea. Can you see the sea?
Wow, I can. Where are you?
Okay, so I am in Herne Bay, and I'm just going to show your listeners stroke viewers the beach huts. Can you see the beach huts there?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so
hi, Simon.
Yeah, so that's where I am, and you know, it's not a somebody rushing to their second home. It's actually me escaping my son and sadly my granddaughter as well, with my partner, because we needed to find somewhere that where we weren't going to be all mutually infectious.
So, I see.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Well, you've made a good call there, looking out at the ocean. I was saying to somebody today, as awful as this is, and it really is awful, and it's cost so many lives, and it's, you know, working for the health service, it must be just terrifying and dreadful and deadly. There is a way in which it's sort of the silver lining which we human beings must look for is that it has forced us into a sort of stop and look at where we are and look in the mirror. How are you finding it, Jude? My first question is always, how the hell are you?
Okay, so me personally,
how are you?
I'm good. Haven't had any mortalities. My partner, I think he might have got it in January and didn't really realize he had it, probably. I'm actually finding it, first of all, wonderful to spend time and not be traveling and not be rushing around. And secondly, wow, the Women of the World Festival, we're doing so many things, which I'll tell you about later. So it's like I'm on fire with excitement because actually there's such a lot to do and such a lot we can do. But then if I look outside that bubble and I look at the kind of economic debris that's to come, and I look at all the stories, you know, right across the world, then I'm sort of fearful. So I'm a combination of elated and fearful.
On fire with excitement. You're the first person to have said that. Is that because the next Women of the World, when we are post-lockdown, is going to be so good?
It's because during lockdown, we're going to do something absolutely amazing. So if you want me to launch in, I'll tell you about that.
Yeah, I mean, launch away, Jude.
Okay.
Launch away.
Okay, so as soon as we went into lockdown, what happened was we did the amazing Women of the World Festival in London, and you were a huge part of it, and it was amazing, as you know.
Which just came out today, noon today. It's me and Susie Bacoma, a little bit from Bridget Christie that she did on the night. She did do more on the night. And then our guest is Sian Clifford, who played Claire in Fleabag and was also the leading quiz. And then we had Joy Crooks doing the music, and you can listen to that. It just dropped at noon today. It was phenomenal at the Royal Festival Hall, packed out, absolutely amazing. One of the last shows we did. And I was just saying, I hope we get to do our 200. That was our 200th. I hope we get to do our 250th at the Women of the World. So that was so exciting. Fabulous.
All right.
Tell us now, what are you doing now?
So we are doing two things. In 2 weeks, the weekend after next, we're taking over BBC Online under Culture in Quarantine, and we're doing a whole weekend of Wow Festival things.
Wow.
That in itself is really exciting, from sort of warm-ups with sportswomen through to how to cut your hair, through conversations about the kind of impact of COVID on all kinds of things in a very serious manner. So it'll be the usual mix of, you know, frivolity, seriousness, and activism.
Wow.
But that, I mean, as if that wasn't joyful enough, which it very is, so much is, we have decided that 4 weeks after that, we're doing our first global Wow. It's a 24-hour marathon. We're going to go all time zones, coming back to the beginning again. We're going to look at 6 huge themes.
When is this?
This is the second week of June.
Wow. That sounds incredible.
Some of us will still be in lockdown. Some of the countries will have emerged. Some of the countries will still be going back into lockdown. But we're going to go from everywhere, from Russia to Ghana, from South Africa to Botswana. Wow. We're going absolutely right across the world. And we're going to, over 24 hours, listen in to girls and women telling us what is the impact that COVID is having on issues that they were already struggling with, whether it be education, health, violence, climate, etc. And then we're going to look at, well, what strategies have we got for emerging better, stronger, and more united? And what are the jeopardies to that happening? So we're still going to inform it with music, with pop-up weightlifting, with all the things that WOWs are, which are fun and powerful and interesting. But, you know, we have to take a very candid and tough look at the world, because there's no evidence, Deborah, that it's a good story when you are in a kind of pandemic, or a war. I mean, some things are better for women. In fact, actually, last night we watched this great documentary about women Spitfire, flyers during the Second World War. And we know that women do amazing things in emergencies, but emergencies tend to send women backwards rather than forwards. So we have to do a lot to try to make sure that doesn't happen. So, WOW is now working out how it does this 24-hour marathon, completely live, virtual, but going to every single country as well, and making sure that they sort of moderate it from their own regional stories. We've never done anything like that before. So we're newbies.
Well, necessity is very much the mother of invention, and invention is what we need right now.
Yeah. So that's why we're on fire as a WOW team, because it's like, oh my God, who knew what Zoom was 6 weeks ago? Who knew what, what all these different platforms were? But we just have to wise up really, really quickly. So listening out there, anybody or watching, please come and join us in 2 weeks' time on the BBC. But please sign up, and we'll let you know soon enough how to do that for our WOW virtual around the world. So that's that kind of news. How am I? I'm a hell of a lot busier than I thought I would be when I first came down with my bucket and spade here.
I bet you are. I bet you are. And are you able to do these events in a way that because WOW is presumably like profitable for all, well, it is profitable for all the artists, because I know I get paid if I do WOW. Is this because this is such a new time for the arts, and a lot of artists are worried that like I don't know, I think the post-lockdown world will be different from the post-vaccine world. So there might be in a month's time the government say, oh, you can go and meet people in an office, and we'll stagger people going on the tube at different times of the day and that kind of thing. But that's not to say they're going to say you can assemble an audience. It's certainly not the size of audience that we had at Women of the World, which was I think 2,000 seats or something more. But I mean, we might be able to be in smaller theatres. How are you making what we I mean, we don't know when. How are you making that financially viable? Because I think the other thing right now is also, if I do a show, I feel it has to be for charity. So there is a sort of, which, I mean, there's nobody telling me it has to be, but I just see a lot of artists are doing things either for free or for charity. How are you feeling as someone who runs big events that are no way exploitative, or they're there as a service, and people come along and they really enjoy them and the artists get paid, and it's not like ridiculous amounts of money are changing hands, but there is that normal back and forth going on there. How are you handling that now?
Okay, it's a really good question. So the first thing is, obviously, 2 years ago when I left South Bank Centre, I set up the WOW Foundation as a charity. And so we're in the same of, just raising money, hoping we can make ends meet. We have a tiny team of 8. And when we finished the last live event, which was at the South Bank Centre, all the other WOWs around the world, Taiwan, visits to Jordan, Baltimore, Australia, they all stopped. That none of them could do live events. So, in response to that, we basically said, okay, let's pool whatever resources we've got, and let's make this WOW virtual something we do for the sake of other women. And I can't pretend that we have like tons of money coming in. That's not how we're doing it. We're doing it as a gesture, because as women we find solidarity. We've got a small amount of money. Bloomberg came to the table. We said to them, would you give us some money to do this? And they've given us some. And now we're on the hunt for more money. We have to spend whatever reserves we've got to make it happen, but we will still pay artists. Because I think the key, or contributors, because I think the key thing is that there are so many girls and women women who are freelancers, women whose businesses are cut to the bone anyway. And let's face it, women in any industry, they're fairly new into these industries usually anyway, because of the tradition. And I'm absolutely determined to make women who tend to feel that we ought to give everything for free because we feel guilty. I want women to think, I have a worth, it's still a worth, and I've got to find a way of surviving this with financial resilience. So I've been holding some meetings, WOW meetings, for women in the creative sector to come. We've got another one on Wednesday, to come and share and talk and think about how they can build financial resilience, not just emotional resilience.
It's a really good question, because I also think on the feminism front, that feminism is a demand for more control, like control over our bodies, control over our legislation, our representation. And at the moment, I feel like I've lost control over the basic things I had, like how many times a day I'm allowed to leave the house, whether or not I'm allowed to hug a friend. I've lost control over the most basic things. Some of them are privileges, and some of them are human rights, like contact, skin-on-skin contact, I think is a human right rather than a privilege, because it's something that you see in nature. It's so important, skin-on-skin contact. I say as I touch my own face, but I haven't been outside for 2 days, so I can't be giving myself COVID. No, I can't be giving myself COVID. It's only a problem if you've just been outside. But so I feel like I've lost. It's not like it feels like, rather than fighting for more rights, we're losing the rights that we've got, of course with good reason, but it does make you feel a bit out of control. And like, will we get those rights back? When will we get those rights back to, like, assemble a crowd, which is really important for activism, to be able to, for example, say, assemble a protest, like in Poland, and I think in other places. I think here it's going to start kicking in. Oh, let's slide in a bit of legislation while everyone's distracted, while people can't protest, can't come together in the streets to protest. How do you feel about that kind of thing? Because, you're running this enormous event, which is about feminism and women and women's place in the world and control over what we have. And all of the discussions that you see Women of the World are in some way or another related to our place, how much room we can take up, how much space we can take up. How are you feeling about control right now? What we have, what we're losing, whether or not there's anything to be gained while this is going on? But I was basically saying feminism is a request or a demand for control, and we've lost control over basic things at the moment. How do you feel that Women of the World is the whole thing is about what we control, or how much space women get to take up, the discussions we need to be having, we're not having? How are you feeling about control at the moment? Are you feeling safe or are you feeling like this is an opportunity for better gender balance?
Okay, I feel unsafe. I feel that when I look at the conversations on television, you know, on the radio, etc., I don't see gender being discussed at all, except on occasionally on violence. I mean, about 70% of the staff, of caring staff, are women. A lot of them are BME. So, you know, there are kind of multiple reasons for women to feel at risk, and yet it isn't talked about as a gendered issue. I think that the economics that we're about to face in terms of, you know, redundancies, freelance jobs, part-time jobs, I think it will have a devastating effect on women. And even if it's men who are going to lose their jobs, I think the impact on the family will be huge in terms of the strain on women. And I just don't feel, with very few exceptions, that there are country leadership, government leadership, where people are really saying, look, we've been trying to get equality for all the reasons we've been talking about for a long time. Here's an opportunity to really examine everything and leap forward. I think it's going to, you know, the conversation is reverting to kind of scramble back together again in ways that, you know, that people know. And I that's really why the you know, the 24-hour marathon is an attempt to muster thinkers all around the world who are not only women. Obviously there are men who believe this too, and go, please, let's not make this a moment where all our rights slip back. Please let this be a moment where women can feel safer and more secure. But to do that, they have to be at all the tables that are doing the future planning. They have to be at those tables.
Well, I was reading another article today about how countries that are run by women with female leaders are doing better in COVID, and they're seen to be having more compassionate leadership. And I've been observing that some men who are world leaders, state leaders, or country leaders have been adopting what would be seen as a more traditional female leadership style. So Cuomo in New York is normally this big tough guy, but he's been doing a much more compassionate Jacinda Ardern take. I'm not saying Cuomo is Jacinda Ardern, do not write in, but it's just a sort of angle or an attitude that's shifting. Is it possible that we are going to see, because of this global pandemic and the emotional nature of it, a shift towards a more balanced sort of leadership and more desire for more female leaders and or a more traditionally female leadership style, without wanting to be binary? You know, are people going to start nicking stuff out of Jacinda Ardern's compassionate playbook?
I hope so. I mean, I think that the key thing here is that, I mean, Angela Merkel has been exemplary, as she always is, as she always tends to be, massively involving all different kinds of people initially to get consultation, really thoughtful, very communicative, etc., and kind of quite low key. I don't think it's so much as like they haven't got to be a woman, but I think they have to take this idea of collective leadership, consensual leadership. I mean, the countries that are going to fare the worst are the machos. You know, the people who are really trying to be macho about this. I mean, Russia's looking like it's going to head into a disaster. Obviously, you know, Trump is ridiculous. I'll fight this virus with my own two fists if necessary. That attitude, I think, does make people look ridiculous. And I think that it's quite.
It's just not helpful. It's not helpful. You know, if you've had someone die, but even this sort of like someone fought and won, as okay, so someone else fought and lost, like it's a virus. It's not really interested in how you fight or how you politically fight or how you. It's a virus.
But I mean, the thing that's happened is that, you know, if you imagine now all of those people going to Davos, let's imagine Davos at the moment, you know, people flying in their aeroplanes and their helicopters, and mainly men, and all talking about how they're going to solve the world's problems. That looks ridiculous now, because that sort of, if all of these people were so brilliant, why didn't they prepare for this pandemic differently? Because the pandemic has been there as a really viable reality for many years, and very recently written reports about all of these things. So, you know, what this has done is it has exacerbated and exposed all the inequalities that were already there. And I think the question is, you know, do we care enough to close up those inequalities in a systemic way? Or are we just going to kind of hope that we can sort of bury them in some way? And I mean, obviously, all women have got to step up to the mark. You know, they can't be occasional feminists, or sometimes I'm a feminist. You know, I'm fine for us all being guilty. That goes with the territory. But we've actually got to really be courageous enough to say we want women to be at the table making the decisions along with men, and they've got to be decisions that put women's stories central to the reclaiming the economy, to reclaiming health, to starting education again, etc. And it can't be a nice to have.
And when you look at the amount of, I think over half the doctors in this country now are women, and almost all the nurses are women, almost all the carers are women. You look at all of those frontline jobs. You go into a supermarket, loads of women. You go to Boots, loads of women. And so all of these people who aren't being given the right PPE,
it doesn't fit them anyway, by the way.
That apparently they've not been given the right PPE for that often it doesn't fit women. I was reading about that as well. But just the fact there isn't enough, like if it were our politicians that were more exposed to the virus and more likely to get a viral load, do you honestly think they wouldn't ship in the most platinum top standard PPE that they could? They would get it from somewhere. They would be having factories working overnight. They would get PPE. But it's like, it's the doctors, the nurses, or we don't know where to get it from. We don't have enough. Oh, sorry.
I think it'll be interesting to see, if talking about emotion, the emotion that Boris Johnson brings to this, having both apparently nearly died and also having a baby within kind of 3 weeks. My experience of both having a baby and also having a partner who nearly died is that it leaves you very liquid and very suddenly empathetic to the world, and you want the world to be more loving, and because you feel, that you've been given gifts of life.
I would agree with that for many people, but Boris already has about 108 babies, and it hasn't worked on any of those. He's got a lot of babies, and he's not actually sure, when questioned, how many he has. He's one of those guys that say, I think I've got 5 kids as far as I know.
Well,
I mean, when's it going to kick in, this compassion?
All I'm saying is, ever hopeful, live in hope, travel in hope.
I mean, we do live in hope, and I think maybe getting COVID, because he shook hands with everyone in a COVID ward. It's not what you're hoping for from your leaders, but I'm hoping getting COVID. I'm hoping relying on the NHS, but I feel these guys relied on the NHS before. There are so many conservative leaders who've relied on the NHS, or whose family were refugees, and it does not seem to transfer here. It seems to still stay here, and it feels like they have quite a pull the ladder up Jack attitude. So I'm really hoping that, what I'm hoping is, I'm not really hoping that Boris Johnson turns into a compassionate person. I think it's too much for hope for. What I'm hoping is he will read the mood of the nation. He will see that people are coming out to clap, and he'll go, if we don't invest in the NHS, we're toast. So we need to redirect those funds. That's my hope. My best hope is for something mercenary on his part. Hungry mercenary.
That would be a starting point. But of course, if everybody goes to support the NHS and they're still being paid low wages, if everybody supports care home workers and they're still being paid low wages, I mean, part of the problem is we just haven't cared about carers. We don't care about
completely.
We don't reward carers. And I just kind of reiterate over again that, I mean, yes, I could ask for Boris Johnson to be more empathetic, but more important would be to have more women at more decision spaces, making the decisions that will help women in the future. And, I worry, this question came out of, do I feel more or less in control? I want women to have more control. I want them to have more financial control so they can take better decisions for our economy. I want them to have more control over the health system, not just by being doctors, but by being decision makers about how money gets spent, etc. So, that mission, more control.
And we need a greater gender balance. One or two women, it doesn't do it, because then you get Priti Patel, who it plays more in that old school masculine pull it out Jack space than any man I've ever seen virtually. It's not about individual women. It's about a much bigger gender balance shift for representation, for fairness, for equality, for a balance in values, for the societal ways that women have been raised to be empathetic. There's so many different factors at play, but it's also, there are other intersections. There's class, there's race, there's all sorts of things. If you get the whole cabinet is privately educated, incredibly wealthy men and women, it's not going to shift the way we want it to shift.
No, and I tell you another thing though, that I'm sure some of your listeners, if not many, are viewers. I know they are from the audience. And men have to step up and take this argument on too. You know, feminism and gender equality isn't a woman's issue. I'm really sick of, you know, every time we talk about domestic violence going up, it's women being talked about who need to care about it. So, I mean, you know, can we have some more guilty feminist men saying, I'll raise it in my workplace, I'll raise it in my pub if I ever get back inside a pub, but I'll raise it in cabinets. It's not up to Priti Patel to be a feminist. It's up
Luckily,
to Matt Hancock.
thank God. Thank God we're not leaving the whole of feminism in the hands of Priti Patel. Jesus Christ. Simon is waving there. Simon is a man who is definitely advocating for women. I think, I know that because he's a friend of mine, not just because he's waved on an Instagram. I'm not jumping to those conclusions. But I think, and by the way, when I said, I don't mean if you are privately educated and wealthy, you cannot be compassionate and you cannot be, I just mean if there's only one sort of person, there's plenty of privately educated, wealthy people who are compassionate, but it's just any one group of homogenized people running anything is a problem because it doesn't represent the population. Any homogenized group, if you're running a tweed jacket shop, by all means, staff it only with men who wear tweed jackets, if that's your only audience. But if you're running a country and you're wanting to educate, if you're wanting to represent a variety of people in terms of gender, you have to represent those people in Parliament. So before I lose you again, I'm going to ask you, how can we help? What piece of feminism can we do for you? What kind of activism can we do, or attention drawing can we do to women of the world? Firstly, can Women of the World Global make a story that we can share @ing the guilty feminist, so we can tell everybody and they can all look on our stories after this? But is there anything else you can tell us now that you would like us to actually act on?
Yeah, stories from your regions, all of you who are listening, just give us information of stories that we need to follow up, and we will make sure. And also, we're going to do a think-in. We're going to do think-ins. So if you want to do a guilty feminist think-in,
I do,
with all listeners and viewers, then let's do a think-in before the virtual festival happens. Here, on behalf of all the WOW team, all the things you want to sure get revealed. Yeah.
Great. Okay. I know there's recent episodes we've done with people working with refugees, and women, of course, are predominantly marginalized and oppressed in those situations. I'm doing something with the LGBT NHS network. So there are all sorts of interesting things that we might be able to think about or put your way, or do a combined event with. So that would be great. So how do they get in touch with you, or how do they get in touch with us about the think-in? Like, what's the procedure for that?
They can follow us, and then they can email info@the WOW Foundation.
Oh, great. And info@thewowfoundation.com. So if you have a story and you're thinking, oh, I don't want to forget this, email info@the WOW Foundation, WOW for Women of the World, @thewowfoundation.com, and then look out on our stories for think-ins and other ideas where there's someone saying hello @thewowfoundation.com. Hello @the WOW Foundation, people are saying. So follow @WOW Global and email hello@thewowfoundation.com. Jude Kelly, it's been absolutely brilliant having you. We might have lost your sound again, but it has been really, truly wonderful. I'm sure you'll get a great WOW Global merch t-shirt from the merch store, and then we can have those funds go to WOW.
Yes.
And
WOW Global.
Great, perfect. Yeah. Hello. So that's what you're emailing, hello@thewowfoundation.com. And with any of your stories, and look out for Guilty Feminist WOW think-ins coming up. And also on the WOW website, where you will be able to see all of the dates of all these amazing online things coming up, and ways to participate. Jude Kelly, it's been absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. Can I ask you one final question? What are you dying to do when you get out of lockdown? Anything you're dying to do? Yes? We can't hear you. You're holding up a scarf. Go for a walk. Putting on a, getting dressed up. She's miming getting dressed up and going out. Yay! Let's do that. Let's have some cocktails.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Hey, there she is. Thank you so much to Jude. Thanks to so much to Wow Global. And we will see you tomorrow here at the New Normal at 6 p.m. Interviewing a comedian whose name escapes me. Thank you very much, gang. Bye.